Hello and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald. This week, my guest is Eileen Higgins, CEO of the Girl Scouts of the Jersey Shore. Eileen grew up in Monmouth County, New Jersey. She started leading early on in her life, as in college, she was the manager of the field hockey team and traveled with them internationally. Now she manages a team and organization in a totally different way. From wanting to be a school psychologist to her first job out of college being in banking, to moving over to the not-for-profit, or as I say, for-impact sector, Eileen shares her journey with us. Many of us know and love those Girl Scout cookies. However, there are so many more programs that the organization offers. Eileen uses her commitment to the mission and to her team to ensure that girls in our community are building confidence, leadership skills, public speaking skills, independence, empowerment, and so much more. Girl Scout badges are tied to a curriculum. Did you know that kindergartners are even learning about coding in an age-appropriate way? Go to gsfund.org to learn more. Please subscribe to the Today is the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. Stream this podcast on all streaming sites. Like us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Zach G. Aploder Kids Foundation, a not-for-profit organization that is making a difference in the lives of children with financial barriers who are looking for an ongoing creative connection through the performing arts. Please visit applaudourkids.org for more information. And for more information about my coaching and consulting services, visit todayisthedayliveit.com. Have a great week, everyone. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Today is the Day Changemakers podcast. As I do every week, I have the absolute honor of interviewing incredible people who are making a difference in their corner of the world. And today I have Eileen Higgins with me. Hi, Eileen. How are you?
Hi, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled that we can get you on the podcast. And as I always do, I'm going to read from Eileen's bio because she has done some incredible work here in New Jersey. And Eileen Higgins is the CEO of the Girl Scouts of the Jersey Shore. In her role, she leads a team of over 130 employees and 4,000 volunteers to help empower girls from all backgrounds to be courageous leaders who make their communities a better place. And this is happening. She's doing this work here in the Central Jersey Shore. Throughout her life and career, Eileen has been devoted to empowering women to achieve their greatest potential, from running a transitional home for vulnerable women and children for over 10 years, to overseeing a county-wide workforce development program for 9 years, to her current role creating leadership experiences for nearly 9,000 girls. Eileen believes in the power of every girl, every woman, every individual. And when the pandemic hit, Eileen led her team in reinventing the Girl Scouts experience, creating and launching scores of innovative digital programs to keep girls connected during the quarantine. And working with local businesses and donors, Eileen spearheaded the Boxes of Love program, distributing over 1,000 boxes of donated Girl Scout cookies to cheer frontline workers on and to support local food banks in the height of the pandemic. They must have been so happy to get those delicious Girl Scout cookies. So that's amazing, Eileen.
Oh, they were thrilled. They really were. And the girls were thrilled to provide them.
I definitely want to hear more about that experience, but I also just want to share that you also currently serve as the board member for Holiday Express and Monmouth Ocean Development Council, and you're a member of the advisory council for the First Tee of the Jersey Shore. So you are very busy. You're a very busy lady doing a lot of incredible things, but let's go back to those boxes of cookies real quick. I can't even imagine how that must have been when, as people were coming up and receiving the cookies and you being able to share them. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So one of the very first deliveries that we made of the cookies was unplanned. We went to Central State Hospital. We showed up right at shift change. And as we showed up, someone else, we surprised them with coming in with our first shipment of cookies. Another group had showed up with pizza. And this first responder receiving it really got very teary and said, "This is like boxes of love. This is amazing. This is showing us support from the community." And it just meant so much to them. And that's where we got the idea from. And the name of the program was from that first responder who called it Boxes of Love.
Wow, that's it. That's wonderful. And what a moment, right? You almost wish you could, put that moment in a jar because it was just such a special time. So thank you for that incredible work that you're doing and the fact that you spearheaded that. And that's a lot of cookies to give out, 100,000 boxes. Wow. So I want to go back a little bit and talk a little bit about your younger self, as you're have climbed the ladder and are doing such incredible things now. But where did you grow up?
I grew up in Monmouth County. I grew up in Brielle. I was born in Trenton, but we moved to Brielle when I was young and really had an idyllic childhood in Brielle. I'm one of 6 children. So my parents were both incredible role models, and pretty much spent my whole life on the Jersey Shore, except for when I went to college and a very brief time lived in New York City, and then briefly in London as well. And then so all early on though.
Sounds fascinating. So London sounds amazing. How old were you around when you went to London?
I did part of my college. I was in London. I did a semester abroad and then stayed a little bit longer. So that was fun. It was great to be in a different city where we sort of spoke the same language, but not always.
Exactly. Right. They have little different slang words than we have. So sometimes it could be a little bit fun to try to figure out what we're saying. That's interesting. So would you say as a child growing up, were you more on the shy side, more on the outgoing side?
Probably more on the shy side. I was a bit of a nerd. I loved to read. I loved to be involved in behind the scenes things. So I was on sports teams, but more as a manager than the athlete. So I got to play and hang out with them, but I didn't compete with them. But was behind the scenes. I worked as a photographer through high school and college as well, and really like to be behind a camera rather than in front of a camera.
Well, it sounds like you were leading then too, though, right? You said you might not have been playing, but you were leading, and it kind of that's how you thought your path followed you from there, and you probably didn't realize that was going to happen way back then.
No, my younger self didn't get all of the leading parts that I had a role in, and even my first trip to England was in college with the field hockey and lacrosse teams. I was their manager, but I got to travel with the team as they competed internationally. So that was pre living there. So we just did a tour over there for 10 days, it got my feet wet and piqued my interest.
Yes. So management of teams, managing now teams in a totally different way, leadership in the community. What did you think though when you were younger and even in college? What was the ultimate goal for you career-wise?
I had every intention of becoming a psychologist. My major was in psychology. I was going to not only be a psychologist, I was going to be a school psychologist. I had a very narrow thought of what I was going to do, and I'm not anywhere near doing that. My first job out of college, I was a banker. So, I mean, really, a degree in psychology is a great liberal arts degree, but unless you go on to higher degrees, there's not much you can do professionally with it. And I was not prepared to go right back into master's program right out of college. I needed a break from school after college. So
I can understand that. But it's interesting because psychology we use every single day, right? I didn't go to school for psychology, but I did go back to school for coaching. And these are things that and then for years I didn't do anything with it. We use those skills without even realizing it, right? Because every day you use them with your team, with, the kids that you're working with. Those skills are just transferable, even though you might not have gone to that higher ed piece of it. But it definitely, I think it gives all of us a basis of how to interact even better with others and all different personalities.
Yes, I do find myself looking at it with a different lens based on what my background was, and even the articles and things that I read, the continuing ed that I've done. I definitely look at it a little bit differently than some of the other people who have been in the same classes. So I just have to be careful. I'm not a practicing psychologist, because sometimes I act like I am and I shouldn't.
I can understand that, but we also have the college of experience.
Yes.
at this stage, of our lives. And so that kind of gives us, we feel like we have higher ed. That, the what did they say? The hard knocks, the college of hard knocks.
Right.
Part of our education as well. So you graduated college, you have your psychology degree. You said you went into banking. So what happened in the banking world for you?
I worked for Bankers Trust, which is a wholesale bank. So people didn't have accounts there. They did commercial banking, and I worked in the thrift product division, which is managing employee benefit money. So I worked with people. Actually, I worked with people as they were leaving their job or first coming on to their job, and as they were taking their payout on their or enrolling into a benefit plan. And I got married right out of college and then had my daughter almost right away behind that. So I took a leave from working and was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years then had my son 2 years later. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a while there, and then just did a lot of volunteer work while I was home. And that led me back into nonprofits. So that's really where the change went from banking into nonprofits.
So what was the first nonprofit job then after you were a stay-at-home mom?
Well, my mom ran what's now Ladiston. It was called United Cerebral Palsy at the time. So from high school on, we were all volun-told. All 6 of us were volun-told volunteers for Ladiston. So we were exposed to the nonprofit world early on. My first involvement was with Springhouse, which is the transitional home. I was in the junior league. Prior to that, the junior league started a daycare center in the Long Branch High School Center, Long Branch High School, for teens to keep them engaged in school so that they could graduate. So I was responsible for that program to get started. And then we got involved with Springhouse, and when the junior league is involved in a program, they put members on the board. So I was put on the board for Springhouse, and then I became board chair, and then stepped in as their executive director when they had a hole in the staffing model, and went in just to write grants. Because I was also a grant writer, and that was supposed to be a 6-month stint, and I stayed almost 9 years. So.
Nonprofits have a way of they become a vacuum. Once you're in, they hold on tight.
Yes, yeah, and it was really working with the women and seeing, that homelessness is something that happened to them. It's not who they are, and really helping them in career development and in parenting, and helping them turn their lives around, just connecting them with resources that they may not have had they not been in a program like Springhouse.
It sounds like that program and what you were doing was very fulfilling.
It was, yes, very much.
And I'm sure challenging, to as well, because when it comes to nonprofits, we know that it's so fulfilling, but funding and different things of programming are not always easy. So what would you say was the most challenging part of that role?
The funding was definitely an issue. I think one of the hardest things was the women, how the women perceived themselves and how the community perceived them, and trying to help change that stigma that went with them being homeless. So the program led to housing. So if they successfully completed the program, they would get a housing voucher. But we grew the program from just the internal program of Springhouse, but to a graduation program as well, so that we were able to work with the girls beyond this Springhouse program. And I would say I learned as much from them as probably more than they learned from me or from our team. They had I was in a book group, and we had 9 copies of a book, because there were 9 of us, and someone said, what do we do with these books when we're done? And I said, well, how about we donate them to Springhouse? I have 9 families at Springhouse. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends in the book group said, I'd love to run that. So we started a book group with, totally accidentally. And one of the girls came home one night and on the bus, and from the bus ride, and she said, I was reading my book and somebody stopped and talked to me about the book. And it's the first time I felt like somebody saw me as a person and somebody who could contribute and not as a burden to society. And I just thought that was so sad that that's how she thought of herself, but glad that we were there to help her. And again, a lot of programs that we developed were accidental. So developing the book group was accidental, but the girls loved it. And friends and volunteers loved being a part of it. And some of them even said, you know, I wouldn't have read this book, or I read this book, but I heard it very differently, because the girls at Springhouse were 19, 20, 21, a little younger than my group. So they heard things, they read some of the books that we read and we discussed, they would read them and there would just be a totally different conversation about it. So it was, you know, it's all enlightening, and sometimes you don't realize it when you're in it, but when you look back at it, you realize really how awesome some of these exposures and chances I've had.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the impact and how that book or that experience probably changed that person's life in some way as you talk about it, and your creative mind, right? And kudos to you, because the ideas and the thoughts and the process you put in place are changing lives from when you started in your career to now. And we'll talk about Girl Scouts in a few minutes. But I don't think that as leaders, a lot of times, because it's always go, 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 we take a minute to take a breath, to be present with the fact of what that impact is that we have created through ideas and our teams in the community, right? Because who has time? We don't have time to pats on the back, or and it's kind of like it's part of the, you know, quote unquote part of the job, but it's really not. You know, that wasn't part of your job creating the book club, but the impact it had was. And I bring this up because I'm a very strong believer that we call ourselves as nonprofits what we're not. We're the only sector that calls itself what we're not, and we're the only sector that describes ourselves by our tax status, which, as I learned more about this, and I heard Simon Sinek share this, I jumped on the bandwagon of saying we really should be calling ourselves a for impact sector. And I just wanted to, I ask a lot of the nonprofit leaders who come on, what your thoughts are about something like that.
I love the way you phrased that. I think Simon Sinek is amazing. I did go back for my master's, and we were introduced to a book, Start With Why, from him. And from that, I think I've read everything he's written and follow his podcast. He really is amazing. I agree. I have said for a long time, nonprofit is a tax status. It is not a business plan. I love, though, that idea of for impact. That is what we're there for. And I might steal that from you. I'll give you credit for it.
Yeah, you know, I'm stealing it from him. He actually did like a 3-minute thing about, you know, sometimes he comes in and he does a really quick video, and I listened, and it was eye-opening to me. And I have been pushing it out everywhere I can, because when a nonprofit goes to a for-profit for funding, right? Or actually, I should say, when a nonprofit in general goes to a for-profit, immediately they feel like they're going to them for funding. But what if we're going to talk to them and share our story about the impact that we're making? And that is why we're coming to them for funding. And I feel like even just changing the wording in that changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. We have to go back to what is it that we're doing in the community. We're not just asking for money. We're providing impact. And I think the more people like yourself and we can get more nonprofit leaders on board to say that we're for impact leaders, the more we can change the stigma around what the nonprofits are asking for and why.
Right. And I will say, especially with Girl Scouts, I did it with the Springhouse. When I went to the county, it was a little bit different, but with Girl Scouts, trying to get in front of, or getting in front of businesses and sharing with them, while we certainly could use some resources, some funding, that I will never say no to that. It's really about connecting their subject matter experts with our girls, exposing our girls to some careers they might not even know that they would be interested in, getting them to come on the board, getting them to be, we call them an episodic volunteer. If you don't have to run a troop, could you come to one troop meeting? Could you come to one council meeting and share with the girls your path? How did you get to where you are? especially when so many girls make a decision very early on in elementary school that they don't realize is going to affect further down in their career path, that they could make a decision and take that math class that you thought was so, was so scary. You may never use it again, but you might supervise somebody who uses it, and you need to know what you need to know. So trying very hard right now when I'm in the community, not to look like we're just always asking for money. We are asking for your expertise to share that with our girls.
Absolutely, matching the expertise with the girls who can benefit. And I think that there's a lot more that needs to be done there. I'm working on helping to bridge the gap between the nonprofits or for impact and for-profit organizations. And I love what you said about episodic volunteer. I might have to steal that one. And I'll give you credit. Definitely love that phrase. So that's awesome. So, we've touched on Girl Scouts, but what led you to them, right? What was the pull to then move from where you were beforehand to Girl Scouts?
So prior to being a Girl Scout, I was the director of the workforce development for the county of Monmouth. And that was really about getting people, making sure that they had the skills that they needed to get a job. But it was also about working with businesses to make sure that we had a skilled workforce that they could pull from. And one of the things we did youth programs, and our youth programs generally started at age 16, but most of our funding really didn't start before age 18. And we were finding that so many girls were excluded from career paths because of decisions they made at 8, or decisions that were made for them at 8. And I had said, if I could ever get in front of the girls earlier to just have them try things, try different courses, and the opportunity came up for Girl Scouts. And one of the first things I realized, not quite on day one, pretty close to it, was the badges that we have. The Girl Scouts earn badges. They're actually earning a micro-credential. They are being exposed to a curriculum, and it is a curriculum. The Girl Scout badges are tied to the national core curriculums. So there is very measurable, and we don't share that. We as a movement don't share that. There's some very measurable skills that the girls are learning, and they learn it at age appropriate. So when a kindergartner learns how to code, and yes, we have kindergartners who learn about coding, we also have an 18-year-old, 17-year-old who might be learning it as an ambassador Girl Scout. They're learning what's appropriate for their age level and their skill level. So a kindergartner, for example, might learn about how a virus works on a computer, and they learn about it by taking a ball of string and they pass it around in a circle. And they can see how when they talk to this person who talked to that person and the string is moving, that maybe they didn't talk to that person, but now they could see how a virus would get from a computer virus would get from them to someone else as these computers. And it's really teaching them, exposing them to some of these skills without them realizing that's what they're doing. So it's done in a fun way, but again, very measurable, tied to the core curriculum, which is, it's really exposing the girls. We know that at age 8, boys and girls are equal in science and math. And from that point forward, girls tend to go less into science programs and math programs. They tend to make choices and decisions earlier. And then by the time they get to high school or beyond, they don't have the base that they need for some of these programs. So my daughter, for instance, is in STEM field. Her degree was in French and journalism. She does not do STEM work, but she supervises people who do STEM work. And she said, I wish I had some of these courses earlier because I would have a better understanding. Now she's doing them now, but she said if I had them earlier, I would have a better understanding of what I'm supervising. I don't have to do the work. I just have to make sure that the people who are doing it know how to do it. So sometimes, girls get talked out of careers because they're not traditional. And that was really my passion, to try to get girls on the same footprint as boys and be exposed to some careers. And to do that, we really have to start earlier.
Well, it is so important what you're saying, and it is very true. I myself, not a mathematician. That was definitely not the route that I went in. But in nonprofit, there's budgets and all those other things that you have to be able to do. And so even though we might not be strong in certain things, it's important for us to be encouraged as women. Because math and science, as you said, that's not where a lot of, for whatever reason, women head into those fields. But I think with encouragement and utilizing skills that they don't even realize, like you said, ball of yarn or that whole process, it is the same thing. It's age appropriate, obviously, but how do you keep their attention over time? And it sounds like you have a program and a plan that helps to keep girls connected to those things so that they don't see it as, oh my gosh, this is not me. I don't want to be a part of this. It's overwhelming.
Right. And we've had girls who've come on board and they've come into our camps, and they were we have a camp in Weirtown, Amity Acres, and it is very unique environment because it's in an old cranberry bog, and it's in the Pine Barrens. So there are not other environments like this on the planet. And we had a girl who went there who was deathly afraid of bugs, and is now in college in environmental science because she was exposed to things. She loved it. She loved to see, what happens when things are dumped into the water and what's happening to the fish, all of the things. And she was exposed to it early on in camp, and she's come back and spoken to us. And it's amazing to watch her growth and to know that it really started, again, accidentally by someone finding something for her to do for the summer. And it turned into her passion.
It's about exposure and encouragement. I think it's those two things put together really do help to introduce new things to kids as they're growing and their minds are maturing. So you are having such an incredible impact on these girls at a young age for them to really learn and expand what they might not have ever thought that they could do. So tell us, because I feel like even myself, we are starting to work with you with Applaud Our Kids, and I know about Girl Scouts. My daughter was a Daisy way back when, but I don't think I know all of the programs that you provide. So could you give an overview for those who are listening to the different things we may not know about? We know about cookies, right? We know about cookie sales. We know about camps, and you could share even a little bit more about that. But what other things are you doing that we could learn about?
Well, our previous CEO, our national CEO, actually had a campaign that says we have a badge for that. So pretty much anything you can think of, Girl Scouts has a badge for it. So we do, our cookie program, our cookie sales is actually a program. It is a program where girls learn about entrepreneurship. They learn about setting goals. They learn about how to interact with people, how to take no, how to take when somebody doesn't want to buy a cookie. We wonder about them, but the girls have to take no. But we have financial literacy, all kinds of STEM programs, environmental programs. We're right now building a garden so that the girls can learn farm to table, but all of the parts that go with it, the math on building a garden, how to build it, how to keep the deer out. We like the deer, but we really don't want to feed them with the food that we're trying to feed with someone else. There are thousands of badges, and we have just in our council, we have over 300 programs at any given time for the girls to be involved with. And during the pandemic, we had to pivot that word, but we went virtual, and my staff really did an amazing job of finding out what the girls wanted to do, how to get them away from being on screen all the time. So we, one staff member created something called a badge in a box, and you could get everything you needed to do a badge. So there were environmental badges, and you got everything, including if one was planting, a little planter and the dirt and the directions on how to do it. And then the girls took pictures of it and sent it back so that we could, give them a shout out for all of their hard work. So there's pretty much anything you can think of. We have a badge for that. And additionally, we have, and I did not know this before I became the CEO, there are patches So a badge is something that you learn a skill for, and those are the ones that are tied to the core curriculum. We also have patches, and those are fun patches. So those are doing something that's fun that you still get a skill for, but it's not tied to, it's not as tied to a curriculum. So we have a spectacular event in the fall where the girls we actually turn one of our camps into a haunted camp. But the girls are learning a skill on how to lead a group, how to take the younger girls through camp, how they do their own skits. We have quite a number of girls who are amazing singers, so we're thrilled to be working with you on that. Really looking forward to that. And we have girls very involved in STEM, canoe team, a robotics team. Really, if you can think of it, we have a badge for it. And if we don't, GSUSA is each year comes out with additional badges. So during the pandemic, they came out with over 100 new badges. Again, all tied to curriculum so that the girls are really getting a micro-credential. So if you see a Girl Scout in their vest, you should ask them about their badges, because they learned every one of those they had to learn a skill for.
I think that's a great idea, by the way, because you see them, right? And you see them sometimes outside with the cookies, or you just see them, I think they're sometimes just so proud to wear it, or maybe they've been at a meeting recently. I think it's such a nice idea to ask them that, because they're very proud of the work they're doing. And encouragement, there's a book out right now by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Perry called What Happened to You? And one of the things it mentions in there is how community coming together is such an important piece. And when a community member would ask, I think, a Girl Scout something like that, they probably would be thrilled to share what they had to put in order to get that badge. And I think it's nice for the community to ask those kinds of questions. So with their parents, obviously, right there with them. But I think that would be wonderful. I know that you must have lots of events, and I know some of them myself, and I've been to a few. But what kind of events do you have, and what do you do, right? What do you do at those events, and how do they help your organization?
So we have fundraising events. Then we have girl events. So right now we have 4 fundraising events during the year. So we have a golf outing. Women of Distinction, that's where we recognize women and man enough to be a Girl Scout, and a community partner for their contributions to girls and to the movement. We have Phenomenal Women Under 40, so that's where we recognize someone who is earlier in their career and is really as a new change maker, is just starting as a change maker, to steal your vernacular there. And then we have something called Top Cookie. And Top Cookie we had that, the first year was pre-pandemic, and it was local restaurants picked a cookie out of a hat and had to make a dessert with that cookie. And then we had professional judges led by David Burke, Chef David Burke, who's he's an amazing, really an amazing entrepreneur. And they got evaluated on their cookie, and then we had a top cookie and a People's Choice. This year we had to pivot and turn our Top Cookie into a virtual event. So we actually created a TV show with Kimberly Kravitz hosted it, and again with the judges and the restaurants. And we also added a component where the girls could be involved, and the girls got to meet and work with David Burke, and he taught them a recipe. And there was actually a little glitch in the recipe, and on camera, he has girls from all over the country, and he's pivoting and he's coming up with something and showing them how to use different ingredients in your kitchen. And as somebody who doesn't cook very often or very well, he was fun to watch. It was fun to watch with the girls, and the girls interacting with him. He just lit up talking to the girls. So those are the fundraising events that we have. But then we have our ceremonies for our girls. There's a lot of tradition in Girl Scouts, and people are usually familiar with the different levels, but we do have higher awards. So there's a bronze, silver, and a gold award, and the gold award is the highest award that a girl can earn in Girl Scouts. And so we have ceremonies around that, and we involve the community. We have community people members come in and speak to the girls. But we also want the community to know about what the girls are doing. So those higher awards involve the girls being very involved in the community and involved in doing something that is, it's a take action project, but it's also something that it has to be lasting when they're gone. So it's not a just come in and paint something or build a bench. It has to have something that it's sustainable once the girls have left. So we have things, one of the very first Gold Award Girl Scouts I met was a 17-year-old who, when I asked her what her project was, she built prosthetic limbs with her 3D printer for children who could not afford them. I don't know about you at 17, but I can assure you that is not what I was doing at 17. So, I mean, these are truly amazing projects that the girls do. They're very involved in the community, and really, we'd like the community to know more about it, and we're working as a movement to share these stories. Women tend to do what we do and move on, and we need to celebrate and our achievements, and we need to teach our girls to do it sooner.
Absolutely, we need to teach them that it's okay. It's not boastful. It's okay to share your successes, because those successes are helping other people as well. So I think that is very true. You mentioned about letting people know and being able to hear the stories. Can you share how do people find you, like on your website and social media handles?
So our website is gsfun.org, so girlscoutfun.org, and our handles are Girl Scouts JS, as in Jersey Shore, and that's all of them are the same, Girl Scouts JS. So Twitter, Facebook, you can find us on all those. And if you go to our website, gsfun.org, at the bottom of the website has our link to all of our social media. And then each region, we have our council is broken up into 4 regions. Each region has their own Facebook page too, and they really work directly with the girls locally to make sure that the girls are connected with a leader if they choose to be in the troop. But we also have girls that are not in troops. They're called Juliettes. They're still Girl Scouts. They do the whole Girl Scout program, but they don't, for time or whatever reasons, they're not part of a troop. But they're every bit of Girl Scout as someone who's in the troop.
Is that a newer program, Eileen, or has that been going on for a long time, the Juliettes?
It's been going on for a long time. It's had different names, but it's been going on for a long time. And it's really just, you can do Girl Scouts independently. They used to be called iGirls for independent Girl Scouts, but you can do it independently. The troop model is great just because it helps with team building, but we actually do programs where we bring the Juliettes together too, so that they can experience some of the team part of it. But it may be that they're involved in sports and they can't get to a meeting, so they can still do Girl Scouts independently, and then they can come to council events. They're always welcome to council events. And then I'm sorry, there's so much that goes on with Girl Scouts. We also have community events where we have, I mentioned Spooktacular, that we do that in the fall. With COVID, we used to do Breakfast with Santa. We couldn't do that. So my same staff came up with a Grinchmas, Merry Grinchmas, and turned the camp into Whoville. And you could walk through camp and there were activities to do, and you met the Grinch. I mentioned Holiday Express, that I'm on the board of Holiday Express. They generously lent us their Grinch costumes, so we could be socially distant. And we're going to continue that because that was fun. It's fun to get the girls outside. It's fun for them to see camp. We did something similar with a Easter bunny, spring related, where we turned the camp into a bunny patch, and the girls again had different activities to go around, and then had a bunny at the end to meet and had their picture. So
which campsite was this?
Those are at Sacagawea. So that's in Farmingdale, and then we have Amity Acres in Waretown, and Amity Acres is a much smaller camp, but we've received some grants and we're doing some work down there, and really it is a beautiful camp with a lake. And if you go to our website, you can actually see a video of both camps just to see what they look like. We have, again, to the events, we have organizations who rent out the camp to do team building. We have high rock climbing and high walls to climb, and mid-high where you can actually walk between the trees on ropes and all harnessed in. Then we have things right on the ground too, if you're afraid of heights. But we have weddings in camp, both camps, and we have groups that rent it out for the weekend and they do retreats. You have to want to be rustic. We don't have a dormitory or anything like that. We do have camp tents and camp areas, but it is camping.
It is. I did get a tour of one of the camps, Sacagawea, and it was amazing. It was calming too. It was just such a beautiful space, and it is rustic, but it's back to nature, and that's what camp's about, right? So it is a wonderful space. And when I went for a tour, I did hear about the weddings and the parties that do people that do rent out, which is awesome. I wanted to just go back for a second and talk a little bit. Women's leadership is such an important piece of part of this podcast too, and I'm lucky to have lots of women on here who are leaders in the community. How do you feel women can best support each other as they're growing up the ladder, or even when they've reached the CEO status like yourself? What is the best way for them to support each other?
Mentoring, formal and informal. I would not be where I am without having had mentors all along the way, including right now the CEOs of the there's 4 councils, Girl Scout councils in New Jersey. We get together, but yesterday I had a quick reach out to them. We have each other's backs. I'd say being supportive. I believe it was Simon Sinek. I don't want to credit the wrong person, but I believe it was Simon Sinek who said that you really have to expect that everyone has good intent, not going, and it can be hard, especially recently, not to go down that rabbit hole, but to assume that everyone has the best intent, but really supporting each other, being there, promoting each other. I am a big believer in continuing education, whether it's a degree or certificates or just improving your work, your skills. And anywhere I've worked or supervised staff, I've made sure that they're getting formal skill training. It's just so important to be exposed to somebody else's way of doing things, and to bring it back, and holding each other accountable for everything, including pat on the back and saying you did a great job, and calling each other out for it, and then learning from our mistakes. It's okay. We will and do make them, and supporting each other through that.
Yeah, there needs to be the honesty without the judgment on the mistakes, because we're human, right? And we all make them. And so if we can honestly be open and say we made a mistake and may need a little help, it's okay to be able to say that. It's okay to be able to say, I did a great job with this, or share that great job with someone else so that they can learn from it. And I think that's, unfortunately, growing up and as a kid, sometimes kids aren't super, super nice and supportive of each other all the time, right? So teaching them, that next generation, as you're doing, the importance of lifting each other up, yes, instead of jealousy and bringing each other down, so that you feel better about yourself. And so that's, I think that's something that we'll be teaching kids forever. That just seems, it's a natural instinct. But are there organizations or anything that you suggest for women to join, to be a part of, that have been helpful to you that you can think of?
I would say volunteer. You definitely want to volunteer for causes you believe in. There's volunteer for Girl Scouts. I'm not going to be ashamed to say we want volunteers from all levels. You can run a troop. You can do episodic volunteering, come on the board, share your fundraising expertise. I would say whatever you commit to it. Focus on your relationship building. If you're in, we talked about the four impact businesses. Groups like MODC, Monmouth Ocean Development Council, where you're with nonprofits, but you're also with business. Make those relationships, follow through on those relationships, get involved. Impact 100 is such, I'm a member of Impact 100, that is Jersey Coast. that is such an amazing group of strong women who believe strongly in putting their money where their mouth is. All the funds are pulled together to support organizations, but there's the accountability. I mean, they're holding anyone that they fund accountable to deliver good quality program. So I would say there's so many organizations to get involved with, but whoever you choose, make sure that it's something you're passionate about. One of the strong, big things that I learned at the Junior League was, if you're going to volunteer, sometimes you need to you might have some great skills and you might even have some great answers, but sometimes you need to sit back and just really hear what it is someone needs. And you don't have to be the solution for everything. The best volunteer is the one who's prepared to help the organization where they're at, not necessarily fix things for them. And that's hard to do, and it's hard. I'm on a number of boards, and sometimes, an executive director might share something and you want to solve it for them, and you need to let them solve it, but you can help them and give them some guidance. And sometimes just stepping back and letting them figure it out on their own, help connect them with relationships. But and that can be hard, because we like to fix things. Women like to fix things.
It's true. We are natural fixers, and we're gonna, we can try to make things better. But I love what you said about the board piece, because that's a really important piece, right? Because when you have your board, there are all different types of boards. Let's face it, we know that there are boards where people are on there and it looks great on the resume, but things aren't, there's no movement, or they're not making meetings and things like that. There are boards that are like definitely telling you exactly the ED what they need to do, and the ED feels like their power has been taken away, right? So those are two sides of the spectrum. It's finding that middle ground where you are empowering the ED, trusting the ED because the board has put the ED in that role. But like you said, taps on the shoulder of, here's a new connection, or maybe this, without it coming off so strong like you're fixing everything, as if that person is incapable of doing the things they need to do. Would you say that is a good representation of an overview of boards?
Yes, I think that's a great synopsis. And I think one of the unless you're doing it on a daily basis, oftentimes the executive director knows that thing that you're solving, but there's all these other pieces that lead up to it that you can't grasp. And they sound like they're being very defensive when they come back and say, I've been on a board where they believe we should have a fundraiser, that the executive director should have a fundraiser every month. Well, if their job was just to fundraise, but to understand what goes in behind a fundraiser, and you get donor fatigue. How many times can you go to a donor in the community and ask them to support you? And then it's not special. And one of the best things about the cookie program is it's only out for a very finite period of time. It keeps the cookies special and fun. But there are a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that you have to trust in your senior leadership, that you have the right person, and offer your help, and be an ear if they just need to speak to someone, but support them in the decisions they make.
And sometimes it isn't the right fit. I mean, we've all seen that, and that definitely can happen. And it's always better to make sure beforehand that you have the right person in the role. But if they're not, it's also important to then move on, or help them, right? I mean, that's the other piece. Some people might just need a little bit of extra guidance. And when you see that, it's it's a fine balance, right? All of it is a fine balance. And when you have a lot of different personalities working together, it can be quite interesting. You did mention, though, the cookies are a finite time. What time frame during the year, just so everybody can hear, our cookie sales?
Our cookie sales start in January, and we can only do that for up to 16 weeks. So we usually end in mid-April.
Yeah.
And with our next cookie, our next season, we'll have a new cookie, a national cookie. It'll be the first time that the Girl Scouts has across the nation. We have the same cookie coming out with the same name. And so there'll be a big kickoff on that. And then that will kick off our top cookie program again, our top cookie season. with the restaurants and having them involved. So we're looking forward to that. And I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you if you're a chocolate lover, you'll love it.
And I'm in. So I should start getting my boxes now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How did cookie sales go this past year? I'm sure you don't have all the updates yet, but I'm just curious to know.
They went well. Our girls, there definitely was a market for cookies. People wanted to buy them, and they wanted to buy them at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the sale, which was good. There was not fatigue in that. The girls, not all the girls chose to sell because of the pandemic. A big part of our sales is digital, and that's done up front. But then the cookies are delivered, and then they do booth sales. And a lot of the girls in the troops were not comfortable doing booth sales, so we did come up with some different ways to sell. That was council came up with some an ability to order online, and the girls could deliver to people's front porch. And the girls who chose to sell had record years. We usually have about a 125 to 130 box per girl average, and this year was closer to 150. And our top seller had over 5,000 boxes of cookies sold. Yes. So,
what?
Yes. So there's definitely a market for them.
You are not kidding. That had to be some parent pushing going on too. Oh my.
No, it really. I met the young lady. It was, she had a goal in mind. She had a plan in mind, and she wanted. They can use the funds for. They decide what they're going to use the funds for. She wants to travel. So through Girl Scouts, you can travel, and you can use the what you earn through the program to pay for your travel. We have one girl who's one of our top sellers, and she's on the spectrum. And her mother said every year she just wants to beat her number from the year before, and she has. And so she's already thrown herself a challenge that will be very difficult next year. But if anyone can do it, I believe she will be able to.
You know, I think what I want to say about the cookie sales, I love the concept of that whole entrepreneur part to it. I have a friend who lives in PA, and she has her daughter does a video every year since she was like a brownie. You know, she does these videos, and she puts it out there, and she speaks from her heart, the little girl, you know, and it's just adorable how she's, you know, she talks about the cookies, and she talks about the different flavors, and you think to yourself that, you know, now with public speaking, she's going to be better served. Unlike myself, who way back when was shy, and it was always like, please don't call on me. I don't want to do any public speaking back then. She's going to be way ahead of the curve. And then a girl just down the street over here, she had her table outside of her house, and she was selling her cookies from her driveway. And literally there was a lineup of cars for cookies. And she found a creative way to just do it from her driveway. Yeah. So I think what you're teaching them is so vitally important, and for people don't really some people I don't think really understand how the sales of that and it's almost like creating your own little mini business.
Yes, it is exactly that, and that's what the girls do. And they did come up with their own solutions. They call them lemonade stands, where they do the cookies at their, just like you would sell lemonade growing up. They're selling the cookies the same way. We just had an event at the Blue Claw Stadium, and a father stopped me and thanked us for what we were doing, and he introduced me to his daughter, who was painfully shy. And so I started talking to her. She just received her bronze award, and as we were talking, she was getting more comfortable in speaking. And I asked her about her cookie experience and her Girl Scout experience, and she said, "I'm getting more comfortable speaking. I'm very afraid to speak publicly. I'm afraid to speak to somebody of authority." And I said, you know, no one's a person of authority. They're just another person. And I'm thrilled that you're speaking with me. And she was afraid to go on to the next level to do her silver award, because it's each award you progressively, the bronze is started as a group, the silver is a smaller group, and then the gold is an individual. And she said, I would just have to do more on my own. And just reminded her that she has something to say, and her voice is worth us hearing and listening to. And really watching her come out of her shell just in that conversation. And that's, you know, when you mentioned asking a girl about their badges, it's the same thing, having an adult acknowledge them, but also listening to them and having them have the opportunity to speak to an adult and be comfortable in doing it. It's so important.
Validation is key for kids, key for adults, for everyone. And being able to listen, that's a key. That's a point that not everybody does well, right? So
Right.
listening and then sharing. And what you said to her about nobody being an authority and just everybody being, I mean, the work you're doing, Eileen, is so vitally important. And thank you so much for the incredible encouragement and work that you're doing with the girls here on the Jersey Shore and your team. So your psychology degree, although you may not have a shingle outside, I guarantee you're working it in other ways. I want to ask you the last question I ask every one of my guests. It's one of my favorites because I've learned so much from everybody's words of wisdom that they've shared. If you knew then what you know now, and it could be more than one thing, what would that be?
Wow. Okay. Well, first buy Apple. That would be my very first.
I love that. Yes.
I would say, I'm sorry, I did go back for my master's after I was 50 years old. So now you have a hint on how old I am. I'm sorry. I'm glad I didn't go right from school, but I wish I had gone back sooner. I think higher education is important, or even I did quite a number of certificates and continuing education. I think that's really important. It just exposes you to other thoughts and other ways of doing something. I think one of the other things, I'm glad that I started at a small nonprofit and then jumped into a job, a big job at the county. I would say that that's really important to try to do both sides of a job. The working for the county certainly helped me a lot in understanding funding processes, having structure in place, but being part of the small nonprofit also helped expose me to what it's like to be struggling with that grant and writing that grant. And you have to make 10 copies of a 50-page document. And do they not understand that you have to make one page at a time, that you don't have a copy, or that you can fill this? And then being on the county side and saying to my staff, do we really need that many copies? Because do you know what it means to be on the nonprofit side and having to make these? But the structure of being in a large organization is very helpful. I think we shouldn't be afraid to jump in to a large one and learning those skills. But I would say boiling it down would really be just develop your skills. Don't be afraid to try something new. You know, my master's is in public administration, very different than what I thought I would be doing, what my 22-year-old self thought what I'd be doing. But it was great. It's a great cohort team I'm still in touch with. We validate each other and still send articles to each other that help. So I would say develop your skills. That would be the biggest. You're worth it. You're worth it.
I love that. You're worth it. And that is so, so true. And so many people may not think that every single day. So it's a great message to share when this launches. And also to share, thank you for sharing that you were 50 when you decided to go back for your master's, because I think a lot of people who may want to do that, or even for their bachelor's, they might not have finished, think that there's a time frame or a timeline, and there isn't. I met a 65-year-old woman who was going to go get her bachelor's degree, and she was super excited to be able to share that. So if that's what's in your heart and that's what you want to do, I don't think there's an age limit.
No, not at all.
No. So thank you, Eileen, for sharing all the things that you did. I'm so glad that you were able to come on and tell us more about the Girl Scouts, because I think not everybody knows all the different things that you do, and the importance of the encouragement and all of the different tasks and things that you're training them without them even realizing all the amazing training that they're getting on how they're going to be able to be successful in their future.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always great to talk to you, and I love what you're doing here and what you do in your other job.
in my other role. So it's funny, as you were talking about how your path, my path was working for the larger nonprofits. And then because I took that and then was able to launch a nonprofit, never ever thinking that I would ever want to do something like that, because it's way different. But yes, so our paths were just opposite, but definitely similar in that way. So Awesome. Eileen, thanks again for coming on and being a part of this, and also for being a part of the 4 impact worlds, right? So now we can both be calling it that. And I love your episode. I wrote it down, episodic volunteerism. We'll share some of these terms.
That'd be great. Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing in the community. You're making an impact. So truly appreciate that. And thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. And I want you to come back on. Love to get an update, because we want to know about that new cookie.
Oh, sure.
and come back and you can share more information about your top cookie event too when it happens next year. I'd love to be able to share that.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large step are you taking today to get yourself closer to your goal? Thank you so much, Eileen, again, for being on here with us. Continue the amazing work you're doing for the Girl Scouts. And thank you, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.